Hello everyone, today is the 8th of November 2017. I am Caleb.
And I'm Anthony.
And we are
The Rivals.
So today we have three topics that we're going to discuss. We're going to start off with the follow-up of what we talked about last time, which was why we thought the US failed to qualify. Today we're going to talk about the solutions, or moving forward. Number two, we're going to talk about the upcoming friendlies for both Mexico and the US. We're going to talk about the rosters and things of that nature. And finally, you wanted to touch up on the little kerfuffle.
Skirmish.
The skirmish, the kerfuffle on this, was it Toronto and New York?
Yes, it took place on Sunday. Yep.
Yeah. All right. So, but we're going to start off with the big topic, which is still the US and how we can move forward from what happened. Now, I've been thinking about it too, and I'm sure you've thought about it more than I have. But I've had, and I think I told you this in conversation, the way I've been thinking about what I would want done is I've been thinking about it as if Mexico had not qualified. And obviously, the solutions would not be the same because the core of our team, as we talked about last year in terms of age, is different. So I don't think the solutions are one-to-one.
Right, and I think the federation is different, the culture is different,
right,
which all turns to the idea that each problem has its own solution.
Right, but generally I've been thinking about it. If Mexico didn't qualify and we had the same problems that you have, what would I want? And that's how I've been able to come up with some solutions. Because if you think about other sports, like Brazilians were rooting against Argentina to fail. And they didn't, and they're disappointed. And if they had, they'd be celebrating. But I'm trying to not be that kind of rival and actually come up with some actual, things to talk about.
Right.
Because it'd be so easy for me to be here and gloat, but that's not gonna...
And I think the thing that makes a good rivalry, and this is a different episode, but what makes a good rivalry is the competition.
Right.
I mean, without competition, do you have a rivalry?
Well, you can... For a long time, for example, Tottenham was definitely not a competitor with Arsenal, but there was still that hatred between the two teams. And granted, that's also cultural, but so is this one.
Maybe, but if we were never in the World Cup, or if we never made it to the Hex, would we be... I mean, the title of our podcast is The Rivals.
Right.
We're yin and yang. We need each other.
Right.
If you will.
Yeah. True enough. All right.
I'm pleading my case.
Yeah. Now, you wanted me to start.
Yeah, I think, I'd love to hear an outsider's perspective. How I like to think about it is if I was writing a paper and I know what I want written in my paper. I've worked tirelessly on it, me and my paper are one at this point, But I can't see my problems because I know what I want. I've thought about it. I don't see the period missing, or I don't see that I've misspelled this word, or I don't see that one sentence just doesn't align with the others. But sometimes an outsider coming in who hasn't invested so much time can really give, a good perspective to look at it a different way or provide different solutions. So, of course, I'm not in my denial stage yet, so I have been thinking a lot about the World Cup, and I've thought about my solutions. But those come from my point of view, my culture, things like that. So, I'd really like to hear what you have to say and then pull the rug out from under you and say it's stupid. No, I absolutely won't do that. But yeah, I'd love to hear what you have to, what you've been thinking. So,
I think it comes down to, first and foremost, the players themselves. So I wanted my first solution. The first thing I thought of was the moment the U.S. failed to qualify for the World Cup. That is when the new cycle started, because next year, you're not building a team that's going to compete for next year. You're building a team that's going to compete in 5 years. So the way I was looking at it was, outside of maybe some very key positions like goalkeeper, maybe defender, depending on the situation, I don't think anyone under the age of 25, like again, with some exceptions, should be on the roster. And the reason for this is, in 5 years, if you're 25, you're obviously going to be 30. That's basic math. And if you think that a player is still going to be competing for a World Cup position at the age of 30, then that's fine. Like I said, sometimes defenders do that, and definitely keepers play well into their 30s. But like a forward, a striker, or a winger that's going to be 30 at the next World Cup, I think maybe that's the kind of player you don't want anymore. Because are they going to start? Or are you going to like use them to get there and then drop them anyway? So I think now is when you start developing these kids that are 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, that are going to be the core of the team for 2022. And I think looking at, and this is kind of a little foreshadowing for what we're going to talk about next, I'm looking at the roster for this US team in the friendlies, and I don't see a reason why some of these players were called up, because I get it. He's not even an interim coach. He's just a one-game caretaker. I get that. But what's the point of bringing in guys that are in their late 20s? How old is Lehaj? Is that his name?
It's Eric Lehigh, actually, is how
Lehigh?
you pronounce it. Yeah.
How old is he?
He's not actually that old. I think he would actually be one of those people. And you've said a lot today, so let's unpack all of what you said. First, I think you're absolutely right. I think we're preparing for World Cup 2022. We don't have a competitive game for 2 years. So, I mean, I think that's undeniably what we're doing now and what we're doing going forward. But where I differ from you is I think where we messed up in our last cycle is that we had lots of those 30-year-olds, right? In our World Cups, we went over this in our last podcast, if you haven't heard it, where we established a lot of the problems. One of them was A, the missing generation, and B, that we had so many players over or past their prime. But they do have something to offer going forward. If we called in for our roster, and we're alluding way to our next segment, but if we called in all 18-year-olds, at this point, is that team the U.S. men's national team, or is that just another youth team? They're not fighting for their positions, right? Because that's our argument with the 30-year-olds, is that no one was there to push them out, that no one gave them competition to really force them to be at their best. And if we call in a bunch of 18-year-olds, is that really the men's national team?
I didn't say only 18-year-olds.
But I think what you said was anybody over the age of 25 should not be.
Right, that's a lot more than 18.
Right, but we did establish it from 24 to 28 is pretty much somebody's prime.
Yeah, now,
right.
But not in 5 years.
But, and this is the next point that I'd like to make, is that I think you need certain people of that age now. Even though in 2022 they won't be there, you need them now to teach, to mentor, so that the 18-year-olds can learn from. Think about when you go to a job and you meet somebody for the first time, and it's somebody who's been at the company for 10 years, and they say, listen, don't go to the third stall, because that's always the nastiest stall in the bathroom.
Right.
Or, don't use the third floor, or this vending machine always breaks, right? You just need somebody there who's done it, who understands the task, and maybe has a connection for you to, let's say, move to Europe. So these are people like Jeff Cameron, who is 32, but is by far, I think at this point, the most consistent and best defender in the pool. Not in 2022 he won't be, but right now, there's something to be learned.
Absolutely. I completely 100% agree with what you just said, but you don't have to be on the pitch to do that. You can have a mentoring role, very much like, for example, we had for a while, Rafa Marquez was called up, and often he didn't play, but he always traveled with the team. And when you heard player interviews, they would always say, yeah, he's not playing, but he teaches us a lot during training, during practice. He's a good mentor. He teaches, he's been there. He's won Champions Leagues. He's
scored 89th minute goals in Columbus.
Right. So he's, that's kind of going against my point.
Yeah.
It's going against my point. But you don't have to be on the starting
But
11,
you need to be on the roster, though. You need to be called in.
Well, you could travel with the team without being.
Oh, I disagree though, because all right, so we're
Why
jumping
can't,
ahead.
for example, why can't Landon Donovan travel with the team, not as a player, but as like?
Well, that's a player not playing anymore, so I don't think that's a fair.
Okay, fine.
Point.
What about Clint Dempsey?
Clint Dempsey.
Why can't he travel with the team as?
Well, because it's hard if he's not being called in as a part of the roster. What incentive or what reason does the Seattle Sounders have to let him go? None. They won't. See, I mean, you have to call him in and take up the roster spot, and I think you need a little bit of that give and take, right? So you don't want it too heavy with youth, and you don't want it too heavy with veterans, but I think you want particular, specific veterans who have leadership qualities and who have something to give for somebody to take their spot, right? You're grooming these kids to not necessarily take the spot right now, but to take my spot in the next year or the next year and a half.
Okay, that short term.
Short term,
yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm with you on that, and I think that you can definitely look at some players that are 25-ish right now that didn't get an opportunity under Bruce Arena or Klinsmann that have been playing in the MLS for a while that could be called up right now.
I mean, I agree, absolutely. I think that's a fair point. And I think you're saying they should be called up instead of the 30-year-olds. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, and I do get that. But I think at this point, it's not necessarily looking at the age of the veterans you want to call in, because they're not going to be playing in World Cup 2022.
Right.
I think you're looking for characteristics and pedigree. So I think you call in Jeff Cameron, even though he's not going to be there in 2022, to say, hey, listen, this is how I do. This is how I prepare for the game. This is how I represent my country. I've got a connection here at Stoke. If you're looking to jump across the pond and leave MLS, or things like that, I think is more what you're looking for. And I think you identify the youth, of course, and call in the ones who you think are going to be there. But I think you need several of those veterans sprinkled in to give that knowledge.
I like what you're saying, but I think that those roles should be... I think the USSF should be using those players as agents for the... how am I trying to put this? The Federation should be calling out, reaching out to these players that do play over there, these veterans that are playing in Europe, and saying, we need you to bridge that gap between our core that's going to be playing in 2022 and Europe. And I think that should be something that the Federation needs to reach out to the players and say, please help us with this. Be an ambassador for us. I don't necessarily think they need to be on the pitch to be able to be a connection, be a reference point for the younger kids. I think that's fine if you want to play maybe a year or two, not even two, but a year and a half while you transition with a new coach, a new system. But I think even if they don't get called up, they should still be working hard. Like what?
I agree, but let's say we put out, and we're jumping to the friendly, and I wish I'm trying to separate the segments, but we'll keep them. If you put out a team of 18 and 19-year-olds against Portugal in 1 week, I don't know what you necessarily have to gain if it's all 18 and 19-year-olds, right? Because the team gets smashed 6-0. And yes, maybe you see who has heart and who doesn't, but they're all so inexperienced that they're all, I don't want to say letting each other down, but they're not helping each other out, right? Because they haven't played Portugal in November in a friendly. I mean, they haven't played this type of talent before. But let's say you throw in an Alejandro Bedoya, who I don't think is a great player, but who has leadership qualities. You throw in a Jeff Cameron. You throw in a Tim Ream, who's been a championship defender for forever now. I mean, you throw them in, then you put these kids next to them, and you see if they can work together. You sprinkle in a couple here and say, oh, he can connect passes here. We still get beat 4-0 because we have 7 18-year-olds on the field with 4 veterans, but I think that is a better way of approaching it. Are they quick enough for the speed of the game? Are they, I mean, international soccer is a little more, I want to say, aggressive and choppy than club soccer. So, I mean, can they step up to that level? And I think that's more what I'm looking for.
But I was also, I mean, again, I didn't say it should all only be 18-year-olds. It should be 25 and below. So you could have 25, 24, 23-year-olds in there that already have club experience. Some of them have international experience as well. They just didn't get very many opportunities under the last 2 regimes. That doesn't mean they're not experienced. And in terms of moving forward, they're going to be the veterans in 5 years. That's what I'm saying. Who's 25 give me somebody that's like 25-ish on the national team right now.
With a lot of caps? Or with
no, just in general.
Just anybody. Kellen Rowe, Dom Dwyer is around 25, 26.
He obviously doesn't have very much.
No, he has 3 caps. So we'll choose Dom Dwyer, right? So, yeah. I mean, is he a veteran for these kids? He's played in the Gold Cup for 3 games, or maybe 4 games with the U.S. men's national team.
Where has he spent the majority of his career?
The MLS.
Right. Like, before he played for Orlando, who did he play for?
Sporting KC.
Okay, but how long has he been playing?
I mean, soccer?
Like professionally, how long has he been?
Since he played college soccer here, and then he got drafted actually to Kansas City, and then they loaned him to Orlando. Then he went to Kansas City. Then they sold him to Orlando. It's a difficult thing.
So he's been playing for what?
He's been playing
5 or 6 years.
Yeah, he's been playing a long time. But I mean, is he a veteran of the U.S. men's national team? It's a different ball game. I mean, playing in MLS week to week, you're not playing against Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi and Irving Lozano. You like how I threw him in there with that? I thought you might like that.
I did.
But you see what I'm saying? It's a different scene, right?
Okay.
And they're just not used to that. They're not. Jeff Cameron plays at Stoke, and he goes up against Lukaku. He goes against Diego Costa, and he plays against them. He has no fear of those players. Now, I'm not saying Dom Dwyer has a fear of Cristiano Ronaldo, but he's never done it. I mean, he's never been in that scenario. So, I mean, it's just, I think that's there. But I think with all this being said, I don't think that was a strong enough point by you. I think that was a lofty goal, and I think absolutely we should turn to the kids and throw them in there and see what happens. But I don't think that's a solution to the problems we have.
No, it's not a solution. But if we're going to talk about like everything that's wrong, I think number one, you have to look at the players. Those are the guys that are on the field. And I honestly think I don't know if I even mentioned this last time because we talked about it a lot, but I just felt like this was not your most talented team. I think your best players retired, 4 years ago.
And I think you're right. And we talked about this on the last podcast, how this is almost like a transition period, right? And I think it is. We're at the end of the Landon Donovan, Tim Howard, Clint Dempsey era, right? But there are good enough players on this team to qualify for the World Cup.
Oh, absolutely.
And there are good enough players who weren't called in and who weren't utilized. And there was youth and players in their prime who we had the least amount of the players we had were in the prime area of 24 to 28. There are good players that could have supplemented the roster. I mean, I think the problem is, and I guess I'll jump to one of my solutions now, is I think, and this goes to MLS, and I'm a fan of MLS, so I'm not trying to disparage it, but once you're in MLS, it is very hard to leave MLS. It's not a hidden secret, but they make it difficult, right? The league takes the profits from your sale. It's difficult to move. I think one of the solutions needs to be is that they make it easier to bring in homegrown players, which are young American players who grew up in the system, into the starting 11 and give some kind of incentive for that. And then B, to sell your players. I think, and we talked about this before, that we should become a selling league, and a lot of people think this as well, and it's a good point, because right now we're not going to be able to compete with the best leagues. Maybe in 100 years, maybe in 50 years we will, but right now we're not. So what do? You become a selling league, right? And I mean, at the end of the day, our best American players need to leave. Kellen Acosta should have left FC Dallas, and they stopped it. They didn't let it happen for kind of a number of reasons. I think Tyler Adams, who you know is one of my favorite players, 18-year-old.
Phenom, is that what you call him?
He's a phenom. And, I mean, but the point is, he is good enough right now to play and start for a Bundesliga team. I will pay all of my money to prove that. I mean, I will put all my money down to prove that. I mean, he just is. But it's difficult for him to get out of the system. So I think one of the changes that needs to be made, and this will help move to what you're saying, is getting, if these players are, I mean, think about Christian Pulisic is a no-brainer, right? Because he's playing for Dortmund now.
Right.
And people just say, oh, he's playing for Dortmund, he's good enough, he's a no-brainer. And I get he's the exception. But I think if we had more players out there and more of our best players out there, it would help to, move that along. We should have our young players going abroad, or we should have our 25-year-olds going abroad. And I think one of the solutions needs to be is we need to change the way the league does business.
Going along that, and this was going to be my second point, I think the players need to be willing to take that risk. Because who are we talking about?
Jordan Morris.
Yeah, Jordan Morris said, I don't want to leave my family. Yeah, you're never going to amount to anything in this sport if you stay in the MLS. I'm sorry. Like, as you said, you and I, we both have MLS to St. Pete stickers, magnets on our cars.
Yes,
we
do.
want it to happen. And I'm with you. Like, I think it'd be a lot of fun to support a local MLS team, and I'm all in.
Which we still do support our local USL team,
Yes,
by the way.
yes, we were there
For the heartbreak in the
heartbreaker,
playoff.
yeah.
Yep.
But it's not the best league, and it should be a platform to go to better leagues. Absolutely. And this is something that, speaking of Lozano, that something his that was talked about with his success in the Netherlands right now. What the hope is back home is that these European teams are going to start looking at Mexico to say, this is affordable talent that we can get.
Absolutely. And I think the same thing should be said of the U.S.
But the difference is, I've never heard of a Mexican player say, I don't want to leave because I'm comfortable here. Even though it's one of the higher paying leagues outside of Europe, the Mexican league, if they get a chance, they're jumping at it.
Right, and it's like we said on the last podcast, and I know I keep referring to this, but it's like in America we have American football, we have baseball, where it doesn't really happen, maybe baseball a little bit, around the world as much, basketball. And so we're just used to that as Americans, that we have this complex. And so it's difficult, but I think you're right. I think Irving Lozano is one. I think Christian Pulisic, Weston McKennie, who's starting for Schalke now. I think it's showing these bigger leagues that we have talent here. Come find it.
Right.
Weston McKennie left on a free from FC Dallas. Something is wrong right now with the system that an 18-year-old who's starting for a top 5 team, top 6 team in the German top flight left on a free. That he didn't need to be purchased from his club.
Right.
Something went wrong there. And something is systematically wrong. And it's just, and I think that is a problem that needs to be, solved. Now, I'm going to go to one last point on this subject, and then we'll move on to our next segment, because I know we got a lot to get to. So, I mean, that's a systemic problem. I think something that needs to happen and needs to be quick is, I think we need a new president of the federation. And I want to clarify that I think Sunil Gulati has been a good president, a good advocate of the sport, and of course he's going for his 2026 World Cup bid. But I think sometimes you just need to change for the sake of change, right? If on our Monday Night League, if I'm not doing good, if I've had a couple of rough games, sometimes I change my socks. I switch to a different color, I switch to different shorts, something different, just because you need to switch something up. Maybe I drink a different Gatorade that week, something. And if Gatorade, you'd love to sponsor this podcast, I'm here for you, okay?
Nice. I like that.
But yeah, I think sometimes change for the sake of change needs to happen. And, Sunil hasn't stated if he's going to be running or not. But I think any other federation in the world, the president would have stepped down and
Absolutely.
would not have continued.
No, just for the sake of honor, that you oversaw the biggest debacle in the history of your country's football
And
program.
this was the biggest debacle,
Yes,
by far.
by far. And you don't have the courage to step down. I think that says more about him than the overseeing of the debacle is one thing, but the fact that he didn't have to put it bluntly, the balls to step down, to say this is on me, my fault, I'm quitting or I'm resigning, because politicians do it all. And if a politician can do it, oh my God, here's this huge debacle that I'm part of, I'm stepping down. He should have done it too.
And I think that's just an immediate move that needs to be made now. Now, I think we have about 9 candidates now, so it's really getting up there. So it's good. But I honestly like the idea that we have 9 candidates, because going forward, we could start to wean some out, right? We could hear their platforms, hear what they say, hear what their ideas are, and then the court of public opinion will obviously begin to favor some.
So who gets to vote on that, by the way?
Oh, okay. So it is a very difficult process to explain. There
Okay.
are several articles. I will not try and do it right now because I wasn't expecting that question from you.
That's fine.
But so generally the idea is that there's different sects of U.S. soccer get to vote. So the youth soccer, I don't want to say conglomerate, but section of the soccer federation gets a vote, right? They get a percentage of the total vote. Each different sector gets a vote. And then I think there is like a 1% fan vote. I don't know who actually is the fans, but so I mean there is a percentage there, I guess. But it is very difficult to explain, and sometimes they like to do this.
I guess that's a different topic for a different day. But I was just curious to see if you and I could.
We do not get a vote. No,
I see.
Unfortunately not.
I see.
I think there is a podcast out there, and I guess we'll put it in the show notes after this, that actually somebody came on and explained it, and I listened to it, but it's like trying to learn the commercial transactions. It's not the easiest thing in the world.
Well, we could honestly spend probably a good hour and a half talking about this.
Right, and of course we have other solutions that we'd love to talk about, but those are 2 that we'd like to see almost implemented immediately.
Right. So on that note, however, we do want to cover the friendlies coming up. So we're moving on. The U.S. has a friendly against Portugal, and Mexico has one against Poland and Belgium coming up. Do you want to talk about the U.S. call-ups first, or do you want me to touch on our call-ups? Up to you.
I think probably we should let you go. You have 2, which we can let you knock those out. And then I see you getting a little giddy, so
no,
you're jumping up and down in your seat right now. So I guess we'll take the reins on this one.
I'm pretty happy with the way
the squad selection.
I'm happy with most of it. There are 3 players I'm sure you know who they're going to be that I'm not particularly happy with right now, and those are the Dos Santos brothers and Carlos Vela.
I see a trend there.
Yes, and this is something we just talked about. We were just talking about leaving the Americas for Europe, and here we have 3 players in their prime that have made the reverse trip, and that on a personal level bothers me a lot. In the case of the Dos Santos brothers that play for the Galaxy, they did not have a good season. Especially Gio. Gio did not have a good season at all.
No, and the year before he had a pretty decent season. But this season, for the LA Galaxy altogether, they didn't have a good season.
Right.
They had a pretty putrid season, if you ask me. If you look at the standings, it's pretty irrelevant.
Right. Jonathan, better season, and in my opinion, has lived up to his potential more so than his brother. When his brother, Gio, was coming up, when they won the Under-17 World Cups alongside Carlos Vela, Gio Dos Santos was looked at as potentially the most talented Mexican ever. He got taken to the Barcelona Academy and trained there, and he crapped on his opportunity, more or less. Now, granted, when he was still in Europe, even though he was getting loaned out, he went to Tottenham, got loaned to Ipswich, and he was playing all over the place. He didn't have any stability. But, I mean, he did score my favorite goal of all time against the US in that Gold Cup final, where it was the fourth of our 4 goals when we came back. We
Yes, I know.
Okay. That goal. And, I mean, that just showcased his talent. And then he went back to Spain, and he was starting, and he was doing well. But I feel like he was always one of those players that felt like he was good enough. He didn't have to try that hard. The game came to him easily, and he just never lived up to his potential. If you have a guy like Javier Hernandez, who played for Manchester United, and he wasn't picked for that under-17 World Cup, okay? He didn't go. He wasn't part of those winners. They're the same age. They're the same generation. But he worked harder to get to where he is than Gio did to get to where he is. So I think he's got these 2 friendlies are his opportunity to prove that he still belongs, more so than the others. I think Jonathan Dos Santos is still young enough that he can make another move to Europe if he wanted to. I think Carlos Vela his situation is Real Sociedad right now isn't using him, because why use him if they're going to lose him in a few months anyway? So he's not getting a lot of play time, which I get it from the club perspective, but he's rotting away on the bench, and it just frustrates me that this is the move they're making. I think they need to prove themselves in these 2 games that they still belong on the national team.
For you, and this is going to hurt me to say, and for your country, qualified for the World Cup, what do these friendlies mean for you? Is this your time to hash out your best lineup, your best roster, to find new people to bring in and supplement the roster? What are these games? What is the purpose of these games for you?
We have 2 games, I won't call them competitive, but there are 2 competitive games left before the World Cup.
And who are the 2 teams again?
We're playing Belgium and Poland.
So you have a pretty decent opponents.
Yes, and I think. And we're playing in Europe, not in the US, so there's not going to be a home field advantage. So I think that's important as well.
The US home field advantage.
Yes, exactly. And I say that tongue-in-cheek, but
yes,
kind of not at all. I think at this point, you need to have your roster picked out. In 2 games, you're not going to have these revelations like, oh my God, I never knew about this player. We should definitely include him. I think the people that are in contention to be in the World Cup next year have already been scouted and picked, and now he's just like trimming the fat, if you will.
So you think it's just picking the back end of the roster at this point?
At this point. Now, there are a couple of players that got called up that were actually kind of surprises. Number 1 is Uriel Antuna, who is he plays in Belgium, and that one came out of nowhere. He's very quick. He's a forward. He's an attacking player. He's very quick. And I watched him, what tournament was it? I think it was the under 20s World Cup recently. He played on the right side, and I found him to be he's kind of like a Jurgen Damm that is actually good. And I hate to say that because I really like Jurgen Damm.
Yeah, I remember you being really hot on Jurgen Damm for a long time.
The thing, and I don't want to get into specifics here, but I think Jurgen Damm's problem is he's really fast. He's faster than everyone else. He'll outrun a defender and then he'll stop instead of making a play. So I feel like he wastes the opportunity that he had. He could cross, but he doesn't. He stops the play. He could make a run towards goal. He could cut in, but he doesn't. He stops. So he I feel like he lacks the final touch.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of players do.
Yeah.
So what your end goal out of these 2 friendlies? What would you like to see?
I would like to see a competitive performance against these two.
So if they go in and lose to Belgium,
Don't care.
don't care. As long as the game is competitive, they're in it.
As long as they're in it and they don't get like overrun. Now, I'd like to see some. I would love to see the players that are going to play in the World Cup, especially against Belgium, because I think Belgium's a much better team.
You want to see that starting roster?
I want to see
on the field.
Yes, I'd like for Belgium. I'd like to see, if not our definite starting 11, the closest thing to what Osorio thinks the starting 11 should be against Belgium, and just go toe to toe with them. See how we do.
Now, do you want to give us what your projected starting 11 would be, or you want to save that for another time?
I could give you from who was called up. I think.
And this roster is everybody who you would want. Is there anybody missing?
I don't think there's anyone missing. As of right now, I can't think of anyone. But Ochoa would start in keeper. I think he's our best keeper by far. There's a very misleading statistic about him last season. He let in the most goals out of any keeper in Europe, in the top 5 leagues in Europe, in Spain last year. But what's misleading about that is he also made the most saves of any keeper in the top 5 leagues in Europe.
So which means he was under fire a lot.
Exactly. But people in Mexico love to criticize Ochoa. They're like, why should he start? He let in the most goals of any keeper. Yeah, but he also saved the most goals. He also made the most saves. It's because his defense sucked. Right? That's number one. I think Diego Reyes, if he's not playing in the defense, he shouldn't be playing. He's not a good central midfielder. So I think it should be him. Hector Moreno, who is I think our best defender. And if you want to play 3 at the back, I think
you don't seem too confident about
I think our center backs are one of our biggest weaknesses. I don't think Carlos Salcedo is very good. I think he's a hothead. He got that red card in the U.S. game in Columbus. And right now he's playing for Frankfurt, and he's starting for Frankfurt, but I don't think he's very disciplined. I guess I would put, I don't know who I would put. I think our right back should be Layun. He can play left or right, but we don't have another fullback.
Yeah, fullback is a problem for a lot of teams, it seems like.
Yeah, I think we struggle with that. I think...
which I'm waiting for somebody to pick me up.
Right. You're left-handed, but you're right-footed.
Left-handed, right-footed, but I play on the left side.
That's true. In our midfield, I think, without question, Hector Herrera, Guardado, and Jana Dos Santos are our midfield 3.
So even though Jonathan Dos Santos is playing for the LA Galaxy and MLS, he is still your starter in these friendlies and in the World Cup.
Absolutely.
So as much as you are tainted by that move, he's still your starter.
Because I think he still has the passion and heart to get better. I think he followed his brother. I think that was a mistake. But I don't think he's like Gio in that he just doesn't try. I think Guardado's getting old, but he's the second leading assister in La Liga right now. He's playing lights out for Real Betis. And he had the chance to go from the Dutch league to the MLS. We all know this. I think I talked about it last time. And he chose to go to a better league, despite the fact that he's getting older. That's what these kids should have done instead. They should have followed him. But anyway, those are the 3 in the midfield that I would play. And then up top, I don't think it's any question. You play Corona on the right, Lozano on the right, and Chicharito Hernandez up front. I think that's a no-brainer.
Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. We have a plethora of attacking players that are just, it's wonderful to see, and you can't pick them all. I mean, you can say, well, what about like Oribe Peralta, who's even though he's like 33, 34, he's still scoring goals for fun. You got Raul Jimenez, who plays for Benfica, and but I think our best is, Hernandez running around the box, poaching goals here and there. And with Corona and Lozano on the wings, we have 2 of the most talented, exciting players on our roster that can just like break legs on defenders. And I think that's our strategy. I think that's what it should be. So I don't know. Poland is ranked in the top like 5 or 6.
I don't know if I trust FIFA rankings.
The FIFA, as I was just about to say, the FIFA rankings are absolute garbage. I don't think Poland is a top 5 or 6 team. I mean, if they've done well in qualifying, that's good for them. I think Belgium is definitely a top 5 or 6 team. So I'm more interested in our result against Belgium than Poland. How we perform against Belgium, I think, is more important. I think it's going to be tough. Both games are going to be tough. We don't usually perform well against European teams. They're taller than us, for one. But I'm pretty excited. I want this to be like the dress rehearsal. I think the time for picking like fringe players is over, and I think now he's going to like I said, trim the fat. Yeah,
I think that was a good way of explaining it.
Yeah. So that's that.
You sound excited.
I am excited because I think it's better than playing some of the teams that we often play, and we're playing away from North America, which I think is going to add a little bit of
you get
adversity.
You get the adversity, and you get the real, I want to say, World Cup experience being away from home, especially against European teams.
Yep.
I mean, there's no better way to get your experience than that.
And that's what I want. So let's talk about the U.S. roster against Portugal.
Okay, so and we've highlighted a little bit of this before in our last segment, but I guess so. Let me get this out of the way because I'm very jittery about this. I am very excited for several of the players on the roster, and I think they should have been there before. And I said it a couple moments ago, but Tyler Adams, my 18-year-old.
This is literally how this is how he texted it to me. He's like, 18-year-old phenom. That's his like first name. 18-year-old phenom.
Tyler Adams.
Tyler Adams. Not just 18-year-old Tyler, or Tyler Adams, who happens to be 18-year-olds. It's 18-year-old phenom. Anyway, I just thought that was really funny.
This kid has every characteristic, I think I play with, but he has a talent to back it up. And B, just what you want to see out of a player. He fights for every single ball, every point of the game. I don't care if it's the 92nd minute or the first minute. I don't care if you're winning 8-0. He's mad if they're winning 4-0 and he misplaces a pass or somebody misplaces a pass. This is an 18-year-old.
That's the attitude that was missing from the U.S.
Absolutely. And I think, and I said it earlier, he could be starting in top flight in a European league. I think he could have been starting that TNT game, and I think he should have been starting that TNT game because I think they needed that youth, that vigor, that willing to run into a fire. And I mean, this kid has that. I mean, I'm predicting him to be a future captain of the U.S. men's national team. I mean, that comes with, a lot of a lot to go with it.
Right.
So I'm like super excited about him. And then Weston McKennie, who's, I think, our 19-year-old who's playing and starting for Schalke. I mean, these two should have been in the mix before. They weren't. But they're here now, and I think we put them both on the field at the same time and see what they can do.
Where do they play?
Both are centered defensive mids, 8-6, depending on. Tyler Adams actually plays right wing back for New York Red Bulls for about, I want to say 80% of the season. In the playoff game against Toronto, which will be on our next segment, he played basically a number 10 as an 18-year-old. He is great, is what I'm saying. He does everything you want. I mean, he's a bulldog, and he's not the biggest guy in the world. But they're both of their natural positions are center mids, depending on how you look at them, as an 8, a 10, a 6.
So they can play together on the same team.
They can play together, and I think the roster should be built around that because as we spoke before. That there wasn't enough fight with the U.S. team. And what our actual youth teams play is like a 4-3-3. And I think these two next to each other in a 4-3-3 in the middle of the park with somebody else, let's say Jonathan Gonzalez, who plays for Monterrey, who's not on this roster.
He isn't.
And there's actually good reasons that I saw.
The playoffs, the Mexican playoffs.
The Mexican playoffs. It's actually going to be their last game, I think, of the regular season. What is the season? Is the Seguia? What is it? They're titled two different things. Yeah, right? They're split season.
Yeah, they're stupidly split seasons.
But so his team's going to be in the playoffs, and so he wasn't called in here. But I think you go two destroyers in the middle of the park like Weston McKennie and Tyler Adams, and you have that fight. You have that that spark that you were missing before. And I think 4-3-3 plays to Christian Pulisic's talent, which is he's a winger. I mean, yes, he's probably a center attacking mid, for the US as well, but his best position when he's playing for Dortmund is really up high on the wing. Let him take somebody on one-on-one, cut inside, put a cross in, put a shot on. So, I think that plays to all of their strength. And so I'm very excited about those two. But we even have a younger player who was called in than an 18-year-old and a 19-year-old. We have 17-year-old Josh Sargent.
I've heard of him.
Yes.
You called it? That wasn't you. Somebody called him the next Christian Pulisic, which is how can you be the next kid that's 2 years older than you?
Yeah, I wouldn't call him that. He's more of a striker, right? He's a number 9. He's up top. He doesn't play professionally right now.
Right.
Even though he was called into the US men's national team.
Right.
He will once he turns 18. He's already signed for Werder Bremen.
Yeah.
And he will transfer once he turns 18. That's just how the rules are here. So he's technically will move forward. So, lots of youth on this team. Now, with what I expect for this game, this is a game against Portugal, who is the European champions. They are the European champions.
They are the European champions. I made a face. That's why he said that.
Yeah, he made it.
I think they're one of
the
least worthy European champions since Greece, in my opinion.
But they are
the champions. They are the champions. You can't deny that.
They are the Cristiano Ronaldo less.
Yes.
Because he was not on the roster?
He's not on the roster.
So, I'm torn. And I think people need to understand that we called in a very, very young, inexperienced squad.
Mm-hmm.
If we lose 4-0, should I be upset?
No.
I don't think
so. Was that a question for me?
I think it was a question for me and you. I don't expect us to be very competitive in this game.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd love to see what these kids do. I think, like I said earlier, you sprinkle in the mix of Alejandro Bedoya, Dom Dwyer, the 2 18-year-olds in the middle of the park, DeAndre Yedlin, who, at this point, he's a veteran, starting for Newcastle every single game. I think you throw in the mix there and you see what happens. I think you come out and with that 4-3-3, though, something we don't really use. I don't think we've used a 4-3-3 in a really long time. But I think it's time to find a style that works. And I think with 3 destroyers in the middle of the park, and then you play Christian Pulisic up top with a striker, and then somebody on the left wing who's willing to go at it, take people on, I think you just see what happens. I think you wreck the middle of the park, and you let Christian Pulisic do what he does. You give him the freedom to run. Play strong defense, destroyers in the middle, and let the 3 up top just do what they need to do. Let them take on the defense, and I think that needs to be what we do going forward.
So you're kind of like me in that you just want to see a fight. Like the result for these games, I don't want to sound like negative, but you're not going to win this game.
No, we're not going to win this game. And I don't think it's going to be close, but I want to see some kind of intention from the players.
Right.
I want to see, and it's difficult because you said this earlier. We don't have a coach. We don't even have an interim coach. We have a
dude that's
an assistant coach who's going to guide us through the Portugal game.
Right.
Yeah, I think is the exact words of the statement from USSF. So he doesn't have a style. He's not going to try and implement something over a long period. But I just want to see what they do, and I want to see when they look across the field and they see Cristiano Ronaldo won't be there, but yeah, give me a Portugal.
Bruno.
They see Bruno. They see. I don't know if Ronaldo's been called in. I don't know. Ronaldo might be Brazilian actually.
Yeah, I think you're thinking Nani.
Yeah,
I don't think Nani.
What's
that guy that plays for City now? He played for Monaco last year and he got bought by City. Anyway.
I don't. I'm not. For some reason, we're blanking on this, but it's okay. I just want to see something out of these players. I want to see connections, right? That's really what I'm looking for. Can Tyler Adams and Wes McKinney play in the middle of the park together and connect passes, shut down players, move the ball? Honestly, I think the most fun that we're going to see out of this team and the most interesting story going forward is who's going to be the keeper for World Cup 2022. On this team, we have 3 goalkeepers who have a combined 4 caps. 4. 2 of them are 22 years old, and Bill Hamid is, I believe, 28. But he just moved to Denmark. He'll be moving this. He signed, so he's already, this next year, he'll be playing for them. I think it's really interesting to see who will take that spot, because I think for a very, very long time, we've always known who our number 1 keeper is.
Right.
And it's been a very sound, solid position where we've had somebody at a good team playing well.
I think you've had decades of really good keepers.
Right.
You had Howard, obviously, Friedel, and then what's his name, Kelly?
Yep.
So it's going to be
Keller.
Keller, right?
Yes.
Casey Keller. I think it's going to be a hard replacement, because I think when Tom Howard was at the peak of his powers.
Tim Howard, Casey Keller, and
No,
Tim Howard.
I'm saying, what did I say?
Tom.
Did I say Tom?
Yes.
Timmy.
This is the alternate universe.
Yeah. When Tim Howard was at the peak of his powers, I think he was one of the top 5 keepers in the world.
Oh, I agree. I think we both actually randomly agree on this.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. He's going to be a hard.
I mean, he is, and I think between these 3 now, one of them's playing at a top team in Belgium, one of them's playing in a team in Denmark, and Jesse Gonzalez is playing for FC Dallas. I think he'll likely get a move here soon. I'm so interested to see who's going to win the job. I mean, I want to see who's going to play in that first game. I think it'll be Bill Hamid, since he's the 28-year-old veteran, with my air quotes, with 3 caps. But I mean, I think that is a really interesting storyline for the next couple of years. Who's going to lock down that position?
Yeah.
So, I mean, those are my takes on the roster. I mean, this game is meaningless. I mean, we can't cap tie anybody. So we could talk about this all we want, but till we get a head coach, we don't know where we're going. Right. So it's only so much we can do with this.
And this game is Tuesday.
In the middle of the day as well, so I will be at work, and it's going to be...
Yeah, it sucks.
Super unfortunate. I'll be watching on my phone under the desk.
I hope your boss doesn't.
Yeah, I don't think my boss listens to our podcast.
Yeah. Well, you already put it in 2 weeks, so it doesn't matter at this point.
And now that everybody knows that.
Again, I guess. Okay, so the Mexico games are Friday and Monday, and then you guys play.
We play Tuesday, and we just have the 1 game against Portugal. Absolutely.
Right. Okay, well, in the last few minutes, let's talk about MLS playoffs.
Yes. So this Sunday was 3 games back to back to back, which I loved because I got to wake up and watch Premier League and a little bit of Bundesliga.
By the way, I have to say, before you get into that, this Sunday, what I had called Premier League was telling my friends, probably like Christmas. It was one of the juiciest matchups in a long, long time. Obviously Tottenham Palace wasn't that good of a game, but City Arsenal, you don't get 2 big matchups like that in the same day usually, and they lived up to the excitement. I thought they were very good games. But anyway, I just wanted to say that I was super excited.
Well, I mean, Chelsea won, so
that's all that matters.
That's literally the end of the day.
I told you that I was cheering for you guys. Hardcore.
Yeah, and I was cheering for us as well, and it was a great game. But it was a great day, and then on top of it, the MLS playoffs, which they haven't been, were on a weekend.
Yeah.
And most of the games have been on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, low crowds. I mean, competing with, everything else. And now they were all on a Sunday, back to back to back. So I got to watch my Premier League, watch the Bundesliga, and then watch MLS. And it was great. It was a perfect transition. I did absolutely nothing, and it was amazing. Get all day of soccer. Who loves it?
And you didn't get yelled at?
No, I did not get yelled at. I think you mean by my significant other.
Yes.
No, she was gone for half the day, so she does not know that I was sitting on my couch watching soccer all day. But no, it was a great day. So I'd like to highlight one of the MLS games, and that is the Toronto-New York game. And this is the number 1 seed against the number 6 seed, but New York should not be the number 6 seed. They missed players throughout the year. They just couldn't get it together, but talent-wise, they're up there. This series was great. First off, New York was the much better team on the day, by far. Wasn't even close. They outplayed Toronto. They got in the minds of Toronto and really should have won the series. Now, they won 1-0, which wasn't enough to win the aggregate score. Everybody knows how I feel about aggregate scores in away games. But with that being said, we got to have some of the best drama that the MLS I'm sorry, the MLS doesn't bring the drama sometimes. It really doesn't. You know, at the end of the day, we all like our drama. We like the tidbits and the details and the arguments. And so these teams, let me take it back. Leading up to it, Michael Bradley and Josie Altidore have been booed at every stadium they've gone to since the disaster qualification.
Yeah, I read that as well, and I think that's
TIFO has been made about them. Pictures have been posted.
I think that's hilarious and deserved.
And it is starting to get to them, and they're the faces of the disaster as well as they should be.
Yeah,
I mean, you're the captain, you're the goal scorer. I mean, you're the 2 most high-profile players on the team. It's falling on your shoulders, and it's getting to them, and it is. So let me take you to the game. Tyler Adams, the phenom, who's 18 years old. I don't know if you've heard of him yet.
No.
Who normally plays right wing back in a must-win game in Toronto against 2 of the most prestigious players of the U.S., Josie Altidore, Michael Bradley, Sebastian Giovinco, all of these players, starts as basically a number 10. 18-year-old phenom, number 10. Bossing the game. His main goal was to shut down Michael Bradley is actually what it was. He stood on Michael Bradley the whole time and wouldn't let him get. Michael Bradley had the fewest touches in a game he's had all season long. And because Tyler Adams man-marked him.
Yeah.
But let's skip a little ahead in the game. Tyler Adams receives the ball basically he had come back to get it towards his own defense, and he shimmies away from Giovinco. And Giovinco cuts his legs out from under him. Just completely doesn't try to go for the ball, just cuts him out from under him. And the future captain of the U.S. men's national team got up and got in the face of Giovinco. And this is great because Giovinco is about 5'6", Tyler Adams is about 5'7". They're not big guys.
Right.
And this is Giovinco, the former MVP of the MLS, Italian national team player, Juventus, his pedigree. And 18-year-old Tyler Adams gets up in his face. And it's great. But here's where the problem begins. Josie Altidore runs across the field and bear hugs Tyler Adams. And at first you think he's going to play peacekeeper, and maybe he's going to, he knows he's going to be in the World Cup team coming forward. I mean, he knows his talent. And you think he's going to play peacekeeper and say, hey, little guy, let's not do this right now. Be friendly, cordial, because they're U.S. teammates.
Right.
No, he doesn't. He's bear hugging him. He's yelling at him. He's a foot and a half taller than him, probably about 120 pounds heavier than him. In his face, bear hugging him. That's the first mistake. And Josie's already being booed by everybody, and now you're talking and hugging in a very aggressive way.
The future.
And so Sasha Kljestan, who's on the New York Red Bulls, comes to Tyler Adams' aid. He's also U.S. men's national team player, has 30 Champions League starts with Anderlecht. I mean, he's a well-known player as well. And him and Josie get into it. And Sasha's saying, you could see him mouth reading, saying, listen, I mean, what are you getting in his face for? You're 2 times the size of him. He's 18 years old, blah, blah, blah. And he's talking about how he's puffing out his chest, and you can't see me doing it right now, but I'm puffing out my large chest. And Josie comes up and gets in Sasha's face.
Right.
And Sasha pushes him away.
And
you think you would think that he had rocket boosters behind his arms, or somebody had hit the NOS button, because Josie Altidore flies.
Yeah.
About 5 feet,
Mm-hmm.
hits the ground, and an earthquake happens because he came down so fast, so hard. He dived. Okay.
Oh yeah, Nat. I mean, I saw clips. All like when it happened. When I saw it, I was just like, it's embarrassing. It was absolutely.
It's so embarrassing. A, you're such a big guy. B, you were just wrapped around somebody half your size trying to bully them, and they didn't go down. Tyler Adams looked at him right in his eye and said, "No, I'm not going to be bullied by you."
Right.
Is basically what he was saying. I mean, he stood up. And then Josie gets touched by a friend of his. You know, they've played together. They know each other, Sasha Kleshin, and just dives, just trying to get a card for Sasha. And it's just, well, I mean, it's great for us to talk about, but I mean, it's just so low. And when and here's the point I want to make. And so later on, they actually, at halftime, both of them get red cards.
Yeah.
And they come out at half. No one knows this. The broadcasters didn't know. So the game starts for the second half, and they're playing 10 on 10, and no one knows. The broadcasters start counting how many people are on the field because no one told the broadcasters. The ref didn't tell anybody because it had just happened. And they're like, I think there's 10 people on the field. And then one of them goes, I don't see Josie. I don't see Sasha. And then they put it together that it's 10v10. They both got red cards. And I guess there was a tussle in the locker room, and who knows, how that actually happened. But the bigger point to be made is the men's national team missing the World Cup absolutely 100% is the foundation of this problem.
Yeah.
And it cannot be disputed. And I think people just say, oh, it's the heat of the playoffs and no. There is something underlying here. All the boos are adding up. Everybody on Twitter saying, you're the problem. You're the reason we didn't miss the World Cup. These are the foundation of the problem. Tyler Adams being the guy who's going to come replace them in the future, and then the youth, and they're the ones going to be calling up. Josie knows this. And I think it's getting under their skin, and I think that is the root of the problem. And I think the guys who weren't on the team look at them and say, you're the reason we're not in you're the reason we're not in the World Cup. And I bet these things have been said, and if they've not been said, they know it. And there's that tension and that feeling. And I think it's so juicy that it's spilling over into the MLS playoffs. And I love it, but it's undeniable that I think Josie is acting this way because of what has happened. And it just shows you how big of a concern this really is.
Yeah.
And going forward, is this going to impact our program? And it's great. It's great that you have 4 U.S. men's national team players in each other's faces, because we need to root this stuff out, man. If we're going to go forward and we're going to move forward, we need to get this out and get it out in the open and try and quash it, because there's obviously a problem that we don't know about that's been festering
for the last month or so.
For the last month or so. And I think we're there, and I think it's starting to boil over, and I think it shows that it boiled over, because Josie should have just played ambassador. He should have just went up to Tyler and said, listen, young guy. Giovinco's his class is way above you right now. Just step away. And he didn't do that. And he didn't do that for a lot of those reasons that I just stated. And then him and Sasha getting in each other's faces. It's 2 U.S. men. Sasha wasn't in the camp when they lost.
Right.
Maybe he should have been.
Maybe. I don't know.
I mean, I think there's a lot to unpack there, and it's so juicy, and I can't wait to see what we do going forward.
Yeah, and it was funny because I wanted, when I saw the article, I wanted to talk to you about it, because the author of that article, and you said something very similar, how when he got pushed over and he flopped, he said, the guy who wrote the article said that he crumbled, much like he did, or like the team did.
Yes, and I did tweet this out. Somebody posted a GIF of Josie falling. I said, I think my tweet was something to the idea of Josie fell harder than the U.S. men's national team did against Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah.
And it's true, and it just shows. I mean, maybe if he stands up and he fights there, he would have stood up and he would have fought there.
Yeah.
Because Because Tyler Adams looked him right in the eye and said, "You're going to bear hug me? Okay, let's do this right now." I mean, it's incredible. It shows the lack of fight that they have, and he's going to fall like that. He'll fall like that against Trinidad.
Yes.
It's a mindset, is what it really is.
True. And we don't have time to go into it, but I've never really thought he was very good. For the amount of caps that he has, he's got not a very
I mean, he has a
goal
lot of
ratio.
goals, but I compare him to one of the players I played with when I was in high school. I hope he doesn't listen to this podcast either. There's like 3 people I need to not listen to this episode. But sometimes there are players who shine against bad teams, right? They do really, really good against bad teams or teams of lesser quality. But then when you up the ante, when they play better teams, they're non-existent. And we had a striker who would score 4 or 5 goals against just poor teams. But when we go up against better competition, nothing.
Right.
There's nothing out of him. And I think Josie's very similar. It shows with him moving across the seas to better teams. I mean, against these lower teams, he scores 4 or 5 goals. But, I mean, when push comes to shove, does he score? I don't think so. And I think he's been given a lot of room to work with, and they haven't let somebody try and push him out. I mean, personally, I think in that TNT game, it should have been Bobby Wood starting over Josie as a 1 striker, go with 2 center defensive mids because we needed that tie. But the fact that we're so handcuffed to him, the coaches felt forced to start 2 strikers.
Yeah, but he's been bad for a long time. He's been bad for a long time.
There are a lot of people who are Josie haters, and then on the converse of it, there's a lot of people who are apologists, and they think that he has a right to be there. I mean, he scored a lot of goals, but in those pressure moments, I'd like to see if he has.
Yeah.
That was a lot today.
Yeah. I'm glad we got to more than one topic.
We got through all 3 topics, and I think we went over the time we were supposed to.
Yep. It's per usual, though.
But if you guys have any questions for us, please let us know. I mean, we'd love to keep talking about these.
Yeah, I got a comment the other day. Somebody said that it wasn't a question. It was just like, I think you guys did a good job. But this is also good. But yeah, questions are good. Questions are fine.
Yeah, I mean, we'll answer all the questions. We'll bring them up in the next episode. I mean, we're here to just have discourse and talk. I mean, we talk about this stuff anyway. Why not record it?
Exactly. That's basically the premise of this whole thing. But anyway, as per usual, this has been Caleb.
And Anthony.
And we are
The Rivals.